Jamal is 36. He lives in Melbourne, makes good money, stable career, no debt. And last month, his girlfriend asked him a question that sounds simple, but changes everything. Where is this going? Not emotional, not dramatic, just direct. And that's when it hit him. Because for her, the next step is obvious, marriage. But for Jamal, it's not. Not because he doesn't love her, not because he's afraid of commitment, but because of a question he hasn't been able to answer. If I don't want kids, what exactly is the point of getting married? And that's not a question people say out loud, but more people are starting to think it because the world has changed. 50 years ago, marriage wasn't just about love, it was about survival. Two incomes weren't optional, they were necessary. Women depended on men financially, men depended on women for the home. They were part of the system. Marriage had a clear function, it solved real problems. But today, most of those problems don't exist anymore. A man can live alone. A woman can build her own career. You don't need marriage to survive. And more importantly, you don't need it for most of the things it used to provide. Today, you can get companionship, connection, sex, support, without ever signing a contract, which leaves one uncomfortable question. What is marriage actually for if kids aren't part of the equation? Because once you remove children, a lot of the traditional justification disappears. Let's start with money. From a purely financial perspective, marriage introduces risk. In most developed countries, divorce rates still sit somewhere between 30% and 50%, depending on how you measure it. And when divorce happens, assets don't stay separate. They get split. Savings, property, investments, everything you've built becomes shared. Now think about that from Jamal's position. He spent years building his career, saving, investing, planning. And he has to ask, what exactly am I gaining? That justifies risking half of that. Because if you remove kids, the financial upside of marriage becomes less clear. Now compare that to staying single. Your income stays yours, your assets stay yours, your decisions stay yours. Your entire financial trajectory is under your control. And for someone disciplined, focused, building long-term wealth, that control matters a lot. Now, this is where most people jump in and say, yeah, but what about companionship? And that's fair. That's real. But here's the thing most people don't fully process. Companionship is no longer tied to marriage. You can be in a long-term relationship, live together, travel together, build a life together without ever getting married. So if you already have companionship, what does marriage actually add? And this is where the conversation starts to get uncomfortable because most people don't have a clear answer. They'll say things like, it's the next step. It just feels right. It's what people do. But those aren't reasons. Those are defaults. And default decisions usually lead to misaligned outcomes. Now let's go deeper. Historically, marriage solved a very specific problem, raising children. It created structure, stability, clear roles, and most importantly, a system for raising the next generation. But if you remove kids, that system becomes less necessary. Because now that you don't need long-term stability in the same way. You don't need shared responsibility at the same level. You don't need a legal structure to hold everything together because there's nothing that requires that level of structure. So again, what's the function? Now on the other side of this, because this isn't one-sided, there are real benefits to marriage. Legal protection, shared assets, tax advantages in some countries. And for many people, a deeper sense of unity, a feeling of, we're building something together, and that matters. But here's the key point most people miss. Marriage without kids is not a default decision anymore. It's a trade-off. And that trade-off is very specific. You are trading financial independence, flexibility, and in some cases, control for stability, partnership, and long-term alignment. And whether that trade makes sense depends entirely on what you value. If you value freedom, autonomy, control over your time and money, marriage can feel restrictive. But if you value structure, consistency, shared direction, marriage can feel like the right move. And this is why you see two intelligent, successful people make completely different decisions. not because one is right and the other is wrong, but because they're optimizing for different outcomes. Now go back to Jamal, because this is where it becomes real. He's not asking, is marriage good or bad? He's asking, does this align with the life I want to live? Because if he chooses marriage, he's choosing a more structured life, more shared decisions, less individual control, but potentially more stability and long-term partnership. If he chooses not to marry, he keeps flexibility, he keeps control, but he also gives something up. And that's the part nobody talks about clearly. You're not choosing between better and worse. You're choosing between two different types of life, and both come with trade-offs. The problem is, most people don't consciously choose it, they drift. They follow timelines, graduate, work, relationship, marriage, not because they decided, but because it's expected. And that's where regret starts. Not because the decision was wrong, but because it wasn't understood. Because once you step into either path, it shapes everything else. Your time, your money, your identity. You don't just get married, you become someone who structures their life around that decision. So the real question isn't, should I get married? The real question is, what am I willing to give up to get what marriage offers? Because that's the trade. And once you start thinking about it that way, you stop drifting into decisions and you start choosing them. If this made you think differently, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.